All right, thanks everyone for joining today. So today we're going to be looking at the CI tools for Archicad 24, and today is the upgrade training session for that. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at some of the things that I covered in the launch webinar, which some of you may have attended, and we're just going to be going into more detail on how those things work so that you can actually start using them and in this one hopefully find out what sorts of things they do. So I'm going to go through each of the new tools and then a couple of features that were introduced in 23 and we've enhanced a bit in the life cycle of 23 and are now in 24, specifically the cabinets tool and the doors and windows tools we're going to look at there. We are going to be recording this session and it'll be up on MyCI next week for you to watch again later if you want to refresh, or if you want to share that with anyone, that'll be up there. And if you have any questions during this session, just enter them into the question palette in your GoToWebinar thingy bob. And once the main sort of chunk of the session is finished, I will come back and answer as many of those as I can live, and then any that I can't cover or that I need more info on or something, I'll follow up with you later on, just via email or on our support desk actually. So obviously we're going to be using Archicad 24 to view these new features in the 24 tools. If you're in New Zealand or Australia, you probably got an email today letting you know that 24 has been released. So if you've got that and you've got it installed already, then feel free to follow along if you like, but that's not necessary. Mostly this will just be showing you how it works. And if you haven't yet installed Archicad 24, then you can do so by just heading to our website, the MyCI site, which is myci.centralinnovation.com, and we've got the Archicad installers and an installation guide, and you can get the CI tools from there as well as the select library and the other things around that. Those are all available there as of right now, but if you have any trouble logging into the site or anything like that, just contact our support desk, which you can do by emailing nz.support@centralinnovation.com. And that'll get through to us and we can help you with any login issues that you might have. All right, so Archicad 24. So the first thing I'm going to look at with the CI tools, which you'll get to via the CI tools menu here, is, just before I start, no, there's no specific training file for this one. If you have something that you want to follow along with, like a project that you've migrated already or something like that, you can do that, but none of the things that I'm looking at are specific to this project, so you can just do anything that I'm doing here in any project you have. There's nothing particularly in this file that is special to this upgrade training, it's just more general. So we're going to be using the CI tools menu to get to most of the things we'll be doing today. The first one I want to show you is the transformer tool, which is one of our 4 new tools with Archicad 24. And what this one does is it lets you mirror your entire project. You might have seen that already in the launch. The idea is that it just gets rid of you having to do all of the extra work that comes with doing a mirror of a project, does all the work for you. I'm just going to quickly show you how it works again and just highlight how the selection and the mirroring setup works. So to run the command, you just click on Mirror Project here, and the first thing that you get is this pencil icon, and you can see on the info box here it says to select the mirror point. So basically it wants you to choose the point at which you want to mirror the project about. I chose the center usually because that will make it nice and easy and pretty much sit on the same spot where it was, but you can mirror it about wherever you need to. Just make your first click there, and then it's a little bit difficult to see because my floor plan is a bit busy, but you've got this ABC on the screen here. You can hopefully see it. It's upside down at the moment. And what that's doing is it's showing us how the mirror is going to work. So if I move my cursor out to the right of where I clicked or out to the left, it's going to want to mirror in the horizontal axis. So you can see the ABC is upside down about this axis. Whereas if you move your cursor up to the top or below, you'll see that ABC is mirrored in the vertical axis. So it's backwards, but it's not upside down. So that's how you set those. If you need to mirror in both the horizontal and the vertical axis, just do both. So mirror it first in one axis and then come back and run the command and do it again for the vertical axis. And you can see that that's done the mirror now. And because I chose that rightmost point to mirror it about, it's shifted everything over as well as part of the mirror, because it was essentially offset. And you can see it's still done the right thing though. So I had in my floor plan, I had some of these labels here. These are keynote labels, but they could be any 2D data. And this is not associated with anything in the plan. It's just a label that I plonked down there. It remembers where it needs to go, and it's still in the right place, as with all of the other parts in the model. So there's not a huge amount extra to the transformer tool. It just does the one thing, and it does it without asking you any questions apart from that those first two clicks. So I'll move on to the next tool, which is annotate. And so this is the one that works with changing the case of your text. So I'm going to open up this detail. Oh, sorry, no, I need to open my other project. Excuse me while I open the correct project. So the annotate tool will let me convert between upper and lowercase text and title case and sentence case in my project. And there's some extra settings in there, which I'm just going to walk you through now, which will let you set exclusions for things that you might want to do. It'll also let you convert text inside of objects and that sort of thing. If that's something that you're going to need to do in your projects, you can do that using this tool as well. So once that opens back up, I'll jump into this view. So I've got a bunch of text placed, and just very basically, the tool itself will convert the text. So I choose the option of what conversion I want to do. In this case, let's go with uppercase just so that we can see the change. And I'm going to leave everything else turned off just so that you can see what it does. So it just converts the case of all of the things in the view, in the drawing that I'm currently looking at. But there's plenty of other controls for things that you might want to do. So if I jump back into the convert case options here, I'll just go through and look at some of the other things you can do. Obviously, there's the different case options, and then you can tie those in with exceptions and get what you need to do out of this. So at the moment, earlier I set up some exceptions for specific words and that sort of thing, but there's also other control that you can have on that. So for instance, I was using anywhere before, so it just searches anywhere within the text strings for the exclusions that I want. But if you want to, you can also go through and say you only want to exclude them if they're at the start of the word or at the end, or if they're before a number or after a number, or if they're between numbers. So there's plenty of control over how you want that to work. And as you go, you'll probably build up a sort of a library of the exclusions that you want to keep. And if you do that, you can import and export those exclusion sets so that you could import them into other projects and that sort of thing, or you could import ones that others have made and that sort of thing. So you can keep a sort of ever-building library of exclusions as you go. So one of the things I'm just going to do on here, just so that you can see how it works, is I've got a bit of text here referencing NZS 3604. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that I want the NZS part to always be capitalized. Using an anywhere, that doesn't really work because you may not always want those specific letters to be capitalized. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that I want NZS to be ignored, but only if it's directly before a number. So now I can enter NZS, and with that exclusion on, I can change to lowercase and hit OK, and everything gets converted to lowercase except for NZS because it is in front of the numbers. So using that kind of control, you can build up exclusions for pretty much any of the scenarios that you might have as you go. And as I showed before, there's plenty of other ways that you can do it. So it can be after the text after the number or between numbers, or at the start or ends of words. There's probably plenty of other scenarios you might want to use that. So that's the exclusions. The next thing I want to look at is just using this tool on objects as well as just text. These actually that I'm working on here are labels, but the tool essentially treats labels and text as the same thing. It'll work without any changes on both of them. However, it won't do anything to objects. So I'm just going to go back to my floor plan view, and I've got an electrical symbol that I've placed down in here with a bit of text on it. This is just using the CI electrical tool. And you can see it says to living room TV there. And so what I can do is I can go into the CI tools annotate command and go convert case. And I'll say, let's go with lowercase again and hit OK. And nothing happens to it because it doesn't recognize this as a text element. What we need to do to make that work is to go back in and just tell it that we want to convert parameters as well, because in this case it's an object, and so that text is actually a parameter of the object. So I'm going to select string parameters. I'll turn on properties as well while we're here, and this if displayed setting will also go further and only convert text that is actually part of the 2D symbol of the element. It's a little bit hard to demonstrate how that might work, but if you do have elements that you have text on, but it's not shown in that, in this specific case, maybe it's governed by the model view options or something, it won't touch them if they're turned off currently, but if they are, then it will if you use this setting here. There's also some options to ignore certain elements as well, which is something you might want to do if you want to convert an entire drawing but not touch certain things. You can get it to ignore anything that's hidden, anything that's locked, or anything that is on a locked layer. So I'm going to hit OK now. I'll convert to uppercase. Hit OK now, and you can see it just goes through and it changes that element to all be uppercase now. And there's obviously you can use this on any object that has text in it. I just happen to use it on the our electrical object because that was the most obvious one that I could find that had text in it. But you should be able to make it work on any objects either that you make or that you get from somewhere else. So that's the annotate tool. The shortcut tool, which you may have seen in the launch presentation, there's not really a huge amount extra to the shortcut tool, so I'll just be really quick with this one. But essentially what it lets you do is select an element somewhere in the model and go find it in floor plan. So you select the element, in this case, an element that I've found while browsing around in 3D that is, in this case, too small, and I want to just jump to it in 2D real quick. So I just go to the CI Tools menu and go to Shortcut and then Reveal and Plan, and it just sends me straight to that element. There's not really any other extra settings for this or anything else that you need to know. It just does what it says on the tin. It shortcuts you to the floor plan. All right, and the last one of the new tools is the Metadata tool. So I'm just going to open up the Metadata palette. And the way it works, if you haven't seen it yet, is you select an element and it shows you the metadata here, and you can manipulate that data in the properties at the top and the classification at the bottom. One of the other things that you can do is you can use live or manual editing with this tool. So at the moment I'm in live mode, so when I select elements, it goes through and it shows me the metadata of the elements that I select as I click on each element. You can see it's refreshing each time I click through these. And so this is working on editing them live. But what we can do is we can change to manual mode, which will let you do certain extra things that you might want to be able to do, such as setting a property set and then applying it through to multiple elements without having to make the same change over and over. And so it's a little bit hard to understand just said out loud like that. So I'll try to show you. So at the moment I've got this wall selected, and you can see I've got the various properties here. They're all set to the defaults at the moment. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to make some changes. So I'll change this one to 3 hours. I'll make it, this doesn't make any sense having that set to 3 hours and true. I just want to make it different so that I can show you the change. And we'll set this one to something else. So you can see now this element has those three settings aren't the default properties anymore. So if I change to another one, you can see they are default, and this one is not. And so now I'm going to change to manual edit mode. So what I'm going to say is that in this instance, I want to get the settings that are in this wall and I want to apply them selectively to some other walls that are here. So I'm going to turn off live edit mode. And as soon as I do that, everything disappears because it's now in manual mode. And that means it'll only show you things that you put in there on purpose. So with the wall selected that I made the changes to, so this is the wall that I want to get settings from, down at the bottom of the palette, you can see I've got the eyedropper and injection icons here, which you're probably familiar with just from using Archicad. They're for picking up settings and injecting settings into other things, and that works the same here with the metadata. So I can hit the eyedropper option and it brings in all of the settings of that wall that I had selected. I can now deselect that wall and the settings will all stay here because we're in manual mode now. So now we've got a set of properties that we can do whatever we want with. So you can continue to make changes here and it won't affect anything in the model until you inject them. So I can now go and select a different wall and hit inject, and then go through and find all of the other walls that I need to apply those settings to and inject into all of them. So you can just selectively go through. You could select a bunch of walls and inject them into that as you go. And now if I change back to live edit mode, you can see that my normal default setting walls, my wall that I changed, and then the walls that I injected the settings to have all brought through those changes. So it's quite a powerful way of working with properties. If you have a sort of a large scale change that you want to make those changes in manual edit mode and then go through and inject them into all the elements you actually need it to be in. So that can be very handy. And obviously the other thing that the metadata palette will let you do is the working with selections, which you might have seen before, but essentially what you can do is you can select multiple elements, choose a classification that you want to filter by, and then hit the filter button and it will filter your selection based on what you had selected there. And you can go the other way as well. So you can select an element, choose its classification, and then select all elements that match that classification. So it goes both ways in that sense. And the same applies to properties as well. All right, so that's the 4 new tools: Transformer, Annotate, Shortcut, and Metadata, and those are all available in Archicad 24 only. So if you do have Archicad 24 installed, you can use the CI Tools installer to install those as a trial anytime now and get started working with those tools. The next 2 things that I just want to show you are the cabinets and the doors and windows tools. The cabinets tool was brand new. It was rebuilt from scratch in Archicad 23, and it's quite different than it used to be. So if you haven't used it yet in Archicad 23, this will be your introduction to that. We've added some features to it during the life cycle of Archicad 23 as well. So it's bigger and better than ever, but it's essentially works the same way as it did in 23. And the doors and windows tool, we also added some fairly major new features to that, specifically the styles and the snap sizes. And those are, again, in 24 as well. So after I've looked at cabinets, I'll look at the doors and windows as well, just to give you an idea of how those functions work. And then we'll go into the questions after that. So the cabinets tool, the sort of main idea for it was that you can place in a single cabinet element and then make it into whatever you want. So in this case, whatever I wanted was 4 cabinets that happen to be identical to each other at the moment. And so what I'm going to do is I'll just quickly show you the modules view, which I already covered at the launch, and then we'll dive into the settings a bit more so you can see a bit more detail of how you work with those and what kinds of things you get to do in there. So I'm just going to go into the settings dialog, and this panel here, the configuration panel, is sort of your overview of the entire objects settings. So you can see you've got the overall dimensions here, the way the face frames are placed, and the way that the plinth works, and some material settings there. So you can configure all of those, and then once you've done with that, you can jump into modules to actually make the changes to those sub-elements. So we have plenty of control for the dimensions of the face, the carcass, and the plinth here. And then once we get to the modules section, we can see how the modules work. Now, as you may have noticed if you've seen me show this before, the way that the modules work is that these are actually presets. So when we set the type as door left, which is what it's set to at the moment, what we're actually doing is we're setting it to a preset that is named door left. But it's not inherently a left-handed door, which may not make any sense, so I'll show you how it works. I'll just click this button here to drill down into the settings, and you can see that up the top here I've got the name. So in the case of door left, the name is door left, but what it actually is a door element which is set to have one leaf on the left. So you can use this to make any sort of setting the name here for your modules. So we've got door left now. I'll make a copy of door left and I'll call it 2 doors left. Whoops. No, I've called it S now. 2 doors left. You can set what the default label should be for it and then set what thing it is. So in this case, I'm going to keep it as doors, but I'm going to change it to 2. So you can see I've got 2 doors there now. Oh, I've accidentally overwritten door left. I forgot to add a new one. Hit plus to add a new one, and I'll make this one the one that I just accidentally overwrote. So let's change it back to doors left and make it 1. So you can see I now have 2 doors left and door left as available modules in my settings here. So you can set up a range of styles there that you can go through and choose for any modules. So if in this case we have 4 modules placed, you could set them all to be left doors, but all to be different setouts of left doors by using these controls, setting different types for each of the ones that you want. They could even just have different labels on them or something like that if that's as far as you need to go. And there's plenty of control for all of the other types that are in here as well. So if you choose a single drawer, you get control over all of the settings of that drawer, and the same for most of the other things. If you choose a drawer stack, you get control over the drawer dimensions itself and also how the stack is constructed and that sort of thing. So there's plenty of control over all of these. And when you're working with these, we show a little asterisk next to any modules that are currently being used, just so that you can quickly tell whether the changes that you're currently making are going to affect something that's already in the model. So that's the modules for the type. And then we've got the sort of sub-modules for the fronts and the handles of those pieces that we have here. So the fronts, there's not any extra settings on this page for them, and we just default to flat panel, glass, and shaker. But there's plenty of control over how you want those to work. If you just want to change the way that the flat panels work, you can come in here and make changes to how they are set out, put a wavy top and base, and make it a TNG panel, for instance. And because that one's the one that's currently in use, it's going to override all of the current flat panels to look like this. But obviously you can use the plus and minus buttons here and also copy and paste settings to make your own styles as we go. So we can create this one as a copy and then set flat panel back to actually be a flat panel. And so now if we go back to modules, we'll see our extra copy is now available and we can set that module to it, which looks horrifying on the drawer stack. And the last setting in here is the handles. So at the moment I'm set to recessed, but again we can do the same sorts of controls over this style as we have with everything else. So we drill down into the settings. You can see it's named recess, and and it's using the shape recessed, but we can set it to any of these controls here, and each of them have the settings that would be appropriate for that thing as well. So if you choose a DPL, you're not just stuck with the default DPL there. You can set it to how you need your specific one to look. And you do also have the option of using a custom handle here, which if you make your own custom object that you want to use, you can save that as a, I think it calls it a custom knob GDL part, and then you can select that here and then choose it. It'll pop up in this selection dialog here. I don't have any in this project, but if you have any saved in your libraries that are loaded, they'll show up there, so you can go with custom handles that way. The other thing that is a fairly major change to the cabinets tool is the 3D edit mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn off the fronts entirely for these ones by making them open, so that I can show you how that works. So you can see these are just open cabinets now, and I'll jump into the settings, and in my settings dialog I'll go to the grids and editing option here. Sorry, it's hidden behind my camera, but grids and editing. And you'll see we've got this option here for what you want to do with the editing palette. And the editing palette is what we'll use to make changes in 3D. So if I click on edit mode here, it's set to hide the palette at the moment. I'm going to set that to partitions, because what I want to do is I want to work with the partitions. There's also an option here to tell it to auto display if you want to, which is turned off by default, but you can set it so that if you start grabbing one of the nodes in 3D, it'll automatically turn it on. I'm going to leave that off for now just so that I don't forget about it. So we're now in partition editing mode, and when we're in that edit mode, it changes the display of the cabinet to this sort of wireframe display so that you can see how you're setting things out while you're working with it. I'm going to zoom out a bit so that we can see the palette, but there it is there. Unfortunately, the bottom of it's going through the floor there, but you can see the main edit modes here. So we've got vertical and horizontal dividers of various kinds. You can see this one here goes all the way to the back, whereas this one stops at the actual back piece of the carcass. So I'm going to choose some of those. So I'll click on that hotspot. And as soon as I do, you'll see it starts dragging around this module thing. Now I could put one in here, which would chop my drawer stack into two, but that's not really what I want to do right now. So I'm just going to go through here. I'm going to click to place the first shelf, and then clicking on the node that I just dropped, move that and create my extra shelves that I want. And then go on, so on and so forth, doing that to the rest of the shelves that I want to have in any of these. And they don't need to be an open front one. You can put them in any. I just did it in this case so that you can see it as I go. And then once you've done, in your edit mode, select this and drag it to the X there, and that will turn the palette off, which will put us back to in the constructed mode so that you can see what the actual effect of that change was. Or you can go into edit mode here and set it to hide the palette manually. Either way will work. And so using those controls, you can make a lot of changes in 3D to whatever you might need to with this cabinet. Before we jump to doors and windows, the other thing that the 3D edit mode works with is we have another object called CI cabinet polygon. Sorry, I lost myself for a second there. And this works the same way as the cabinet tool that we've been looking at, only it has a completely customizable outer carcass shape. So if you choose this one and then look at the edit modes, you'll see we also have shape and edge type available, so that will let us change the actual outside shape of the cabinet itself, as well as doing the partitions, which is what we did on the normal one. While we're in here, the other objects that we have available is an edge molding object that'll let you create just standalone edge molding, a corner and good cabinet, and a interior corner cabinet, and also a bench top object so that you can put bench tops on top of your cabinets once you're done as well, and that has a similar graphic editing mode so that you can make it the shape and size that you need it to be, and then modify the types of edges that you want on that, and that'll let you make a finished looking countertop that covers your whole area that you need to. All right. Now the last thing I want to look at is the doors and windows changes. The styles that I've just been using with the cabinet tool, so that way of setting the frames and that sort of thing, we have a very similar style system working in the doors and windows tool as well. And so I'm just going to quickly go over how that works, because that was something that we added new in 23 as well. Both of these new things, the way that cabinets work in 23 and 24, and the way that these new parts of doors and windows work in 23 and 24 were all added as part of dialogue with customers like you guys, who suggested the way that these should work and that sort of thing. So if you do at any point have any suggestions for things that we could do with the tools that would make them more useful to you and that sort of thing, please do send that through to us, because all of that sort of feedback is really valuable. We want to make the tools be as useful as possible for you guys, and so if you think of anything that you think would make them more useful to you, we're always eager to hear that sort of thing. So with the window tool, it works the same in the door tool, but I'm going to work with windows for now. What we've got is we have a overall configuration setting in these. And if I click on that, you can see a little bit of how it works. So at the top, I don't have any style selected currently, so I'm just going to open this flyout here, and I'm going to choose a style. We've got a bunch of preset styles in here, which you can choose from. So just go through and pick the style that you want. I'm going to go with single awning and fixed. And what that does is it goes through and applies a style to this window. So you can see now it has modified the window to be a single awning on one side and fixed on the other, which is what I told it to do using that style. So that was one of the styles that it comes with, but you can modify them yourself as well and make your own, which is again something that you probably would do the same sorts of thing in multiple projects, so you could build up a library of styles to work with on all your projects. So in this case, I'm using this one here, and that's applied the sort of set out of the glazing and that sort of thing of the window. And the next thing that I want to do is work with the size of that. So you can see at the moment it's set to custom size. So I'm going to come in here, and the way that this is laid out is it uses a thing that we call snap sizes. And essentially what you can do is you can go through and preset a bunch of sizes that you want it to fit to. The idea behind this is that with your joinery manufacturer, when you're specifying joinery, you're going to be most likely choosing specific manufacturer that's going to make them, and they will have certain sizings that they produce. And so what the snap sizes are a set out of those preset sizes, so that you can essentially lock your windows to fit into the catalog of the people you're going to order the joinery from. So I'll choose 12 by 18 in this case, and you'll be able to see here that it's changed dimensions a bit to match that. And once I click OK, it will make the window into the thing that I just set it to. Now, what did that actually do? You can see it's changed dimensions, and it says it's 12 by 8 now, but what does 12 by 8 mean? So what we're going to do now is we're going to hit this snap sizes drill down option so that you can see how the snap sizes work. So at the moment, I'm looking at the widths, and they vary from 1 up to 8 at the moment. And I can click on the top left here and go to heights and see what the height snaps are. So the codes here are the numbers that I was looking at before. You can see there's a series of them, and they correspond with unit heights. And so those are set up to match whatever the manufacturer's catalog is. So they'll have a window which has height code 14, and that means 1372. So that's preset to match their codes to their sizings. And the widths work the same way. You can see there's a code and then a sizing there. And so when we choose a new snap size there, that's what we're doing, is we're going through and setting the window to use one of these. Now, when we have a snap size set for the window, you can see it's showing 12 by 8 the height is set to 12 and the width is set to 18, sorry, not 8, 18. And because of that, we can construct the code which matches what's in the manufacturer's catalog based on that. So you can see at the moment it's formatted to say configuration, which is preset to say DA, then the height, then the width, then a dash, and then an M to show if it's mirrored or not. And in this case, it's showing OX, and if it was mirrored, it would be showing XO. So that is preset in this style, but you can make make changes to all of that yourself so that you could set up your own essentially catalogs of windows. And so now I have DI 1218 OX, and you can see that the label of the window tells me that code now. And so all of your joinery can be placed showing the actual codes that it's using. And now if we select the window and resize it down, instead of going to the size that I drew it to, it goes to the snap size that is closest to what I went to. So you can see the window dimensions have changed, but not changed to where I clicked. They just went to the closest that they could get. And my label has immediately updated itself to say the new code of the thing that I have selected. So if I jump into those settings again, you can see that I now have 12 by 15 selected because that's the smallest available in the 12 set, and it has changed the code automatically. So the idea with these is that you have a whole bunch of them set up, and then you can just move them around and resize them and not have to worry about making sure they match up with something in your joinery catalog and that sort of thing. It's just going to think about all of that for you. All you need to do is set it one time in advance. So that's the styles and snap sizing in particular of the window and door tool. And it works the same way in the door tool as well as it did in the window there. All right, so that's all of the new stuff that I wanted to show today. Again, those first 4 tools, those are only available in Archicad 24, but the cabinet tool and the doors and windows tool, the functions that I've just shown here, are all in Archicad 23 and in 24 as well. So if you have either of those versions installed, you have all of these features already. I'm just going to go and have a look at the questions now. So if you have any more to add, just add them in. And as I said, if you do have any feedback, or if you think of any other questions after the session happens, please do just send that through to us on the support desk, because we're always wanting to know what you think of how the tools work currently and ideas for anything that you think would make the tools better as well. That's always great to hear from you.